Manchester United, one of, if not the biggest football club in the world, always associated with stability, with success, with class. The Glazers dealt with a lot of that, from the class to the success to the stability. They don't really associate that with Manchester United no more. Now, under the stewardship of Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS, we were hoping to start course correcting, to start getting back to that. But there has been a string of eyebrow-raising decisions, revelations, leaks, whatever you want to call it, that I thought we would never witness. The sacking of Dan Ashworth, where he spent as long on gardening leave to join us as he did in the job, to the abrupt managerial changes, to the controversial cost-cutting measures and the ridiculous price hikes for match tickets, it begs the question, is this part of the inevitable rebuilding of a giant, or is the club being run in a manner that should alarm even the most patient of supporters? Now let's roll it back to last season. Manchester United have a poor finish in the league under Erik ten Hag, and against all the odds beat Manchester City in the FA Cup final. Now, around that time, there was a very, very public managerial hunt. There was people that were being flirted with publicly. Tensions were running high. The FA Cup final becomes a backdrop to boardroom politics. United, against the odds, win it. And United make the decision to extend Erik ten Hag. It wasn't really extension, it was something that was already in his contract, but they essentially decide to stick with Erik ten Hag. Doesn't last long, and he's gone. We see Ruud van Nistelrooy come in for a moment, and Ruben Amorim gets appointed. We see the summer transfer window. The acquisition of Dan Ashworth for 2.5 to 3 million, supposedly. A renowned figure when it comes to football operations, heralded as a 10 out of 10 sporting director upon his recruitment, someone that's going to help bring structure and stability. He goes on gardening leave. By the way, his garden must be sensational at the moment. He goes on gardening leave. It delays his arrival. He doesn't come till July because of the entanglement with Newcastle. A long wait that builds a lot of expectation and anticipation and expectation. Now he gets here. He oversees a £200 million summer spending spree, sanctions top signings, works closely with Erik ten Hag at first. Meant to be shaping the club's footballing philosophy, streamlining recruitment and bringing in a new era. Then he gets binned. Now, the timeline of his dismissal is interesting. He goes to the 21s game in the morning. He watches a senior side from the director's box in the afternoon as if business as usual. 20 minutes after final whistle, he's ushered into an office and told he's gone. And the abruptness has left everyone stunned. So why? Supposedly a lack of decisiveness in identifying the new manager beyond Erik ten Hag. Ashworth recommended some familiar Premier League names. Eddie Howe, Marco Silva, Thomas Frank, Graham Potter. And was supposedly hard for Gareth Southgate. Now, on one hand, I see this as being quite decisive from the footballing board at the club. I think anyone who sits there and puts their hand up and says, I think we should have Gareth Southgate as a manager, and the fact that they've gone, oh, do you now? Get your shit, I think is a positive thing. Supposedly the club, i.e. Jim Ratcliffe, and potentially others, wanted a bold, charismatic leader, which is why we've ended up with Amorim. There was disagreements with Ratcliffe over the data-driven recruitment. Ashworth suggested using a data company, I presume someone like a 21st Club, something like that, to help analyse managerial candidates. Ratcliffe, seen his arse, said that was the sporting director's job. I think he's correct to a greater or lesser degree. There was cultural clashes. He struggled with the cost-cutting environment. INEOS demanded quick results, lean the staff, no concessions. He was hesitant to cut people in his department, and that didn't sit well with Jim Ratcliffe, supposedly. And then he's gone. So right now the structure is you have a hierarchy of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Dave Brailsford, Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, seemingly trying to hold the fort. No decision been made yet on whether we're going to actually even appoint another sporting director or if between these guys, these are going to do it themselves. But so that's also bringing about confusion about who to actually approach. If you're a club coming to try and buy a United player, or if you're United trying to bring a player in, who is the contact? Manchester United shouldn't have confusion about whose responsibility it is to do whatever it is that needs doing. That needs to be fixed up quick, especially with a January transfer window that's going to be absolutely critical to how Amorim is able to take us forward in 2025. And then you've got all the other stuff going on with INEOS as well. The prices for regular match tickets. So there was controversy at the start of the season where everyone's now had to move over to the app, and the phones are only on the app. The tickets are only on the app, and they can only be used on one app at a time. And if you can't go to the game, and by the way, you have to go to all of the league matches or donate your ticket back to the club or sell your ticket back to the club. And then the club's going to then start charging people 250 quid for your £41 ticket. They've upped the price of every ticket across the board, no concessions, even children and pensioners, to £66 per game. And we saw for the Nottingham Forest game, the first time in a long time, loads of empty seats available on the ticket exchange because of that decision. It was a bold and extremely unpopular and I think short-sighted move to try and squeeze more money out of supporters. What you get on a match day, those 66 quids are gone in the blink of an eye when negotiating for a transfer or a player's wages. The goodwill that Jim Ratcliffe had established up until that point was completely eroded with that decision. If it wasn't already damaged by the staff redundancies, 250 staff redundancies, the office Christmas party cancelled, an atmosphere at the club described as very low morale. I know quite a lot of people involved in the media team, and I know that people were finding out that they were going to be made redundant by the fact that they weren't going on the American tour. That was kind of how they were finding out. And there was a lot of people surprised that they thought they were going to be going one day, and guess what? You're not. Then there's the controversy with the Busby Babes family members, the survivors of the Busby Babes. They've got tickets. There was a public outcry, supposedly after an Alex Ferguson intervention, that they had to backtrack on trying to remove some of the privileges from the families of some of our most legendary players. It's a PR disaster that costs you nothing, saves you nothing, and is a complete disconnect from the heritage of this football club. And it's only the heritage of this football club, which is why you give a fuck about us in the first place. Don't piss on our history. And then you got Sir Alex Ferguson. Now, Sir Alex Ferguson made a substantial amount of money, but INEOS cut his payments, stopped his courtesy arrangements. And whether you agree with it or you disagree with it, the optics of it are just not good. It enrages the traditionalist. It creates more negative optics. And then you've got the treatment of the women's team. Temporary facilities with the women's team while the men's side sees the major renovations. You've got former captains expressing dissatisfaction publicly. You've seen some of the most popular and biggest names in world football have played for Manchester United's women's team, and they've just been allowed to walk out the door because the club seemingly doesn't give a fuck about them. I don't really watch women's football. I have no issue with it whatsoever. And I want women's football to be a success at Manchester United, and I want women's football to be a success in Manchester. The only reason I don't really watch it is because of how busy I am trying to keep up with all of the other stuff that I have to do on the men's side of stuff. My sister used to play for Manchester United. My daughter likes football and she's going to be starting training soon. Maybe one day she could play for Manchester United. But the attitude of Manchester United to the women's team is disappointing. Either do it and try to be fucking mega at it, or just don't do it. Like this half-arsed box tick that they're attempting to do. It feels patronising. Now, if we look at what INEOS have been at beyond Manchester United, you look at Nice, obviously in League One. They bought Nice in 2019 with big promises of transformation and Champions League ambitions. The results, pretty mixed bag actually. They've had quite frequent managerial turnovers from Gaultier to Vieira. There's been a bit of an inability to settle on what the long-term vision and project of it is. Fans saw flashes of potential, but they've not really ever seen a consistent, clear plan. We haven't really seen them at Old Trafford long enough to be able to say that there's parallels to be drawn there, but that's worrying. There was a feeling at Nice that the INEOS management was constantly chasing quick fixes rather than trying to build patiently. That ties up with the the little word on the street there about just fucking get on with it a little bit that Dan Ashworth was dealing with. Then we look at Team Sky, Team INEOS in cycling. They took over what was a legendary team in Team Sky, an absolute cycling powerhouse. They did maintain success, but as time went on, dominance waned. Now that could just be natural cycle, without being a pun, of things. Criticism emerged about their inability to innovate and adapt when the pressure got ramped up from the original winning formula. Just like at United, massive resources don't always translate to seamless success when the decision-making is too reactive. They've also had Lausanne Sport in Switzerland, another football club under the INEOS umbrella. Lausanne have experienced both ups and downs, managerial changes, and difficulty establishing a stable long-term project. So there's a pattern here of governance versus club culture. INEOS comes from a world of chemical manufacturing and high-performance sports. Their style is data-driven, direct, decisive, and actually quite often ruthless. That might work in some niche sports or smaller clubs, but scaling that approach to an institution like Manchester United, steeped in tradition for centuries, is a little bit more complicated. Football clubs have got hearts and souls that are shaped by the fans and the expectation of those fans, the legacy of the badge and the community values. INEOS appears to be trying to clash with that. And this is before we even talk about the demolition of Old Trafford, which is in the pipeline. They're trying to run United like a high-stakes corporate venture, where something doesn't work in 5 months, you rip it up and start over again. I don't know if football clubs can be run like that. So the questions remain. Is this just teething problems? I think you're quite right and accurate to say that INEOS inherited an absolute mess, an unambitious shit show that was the legacy of the Glazers. And they're making tough calls. They came in and was decisive in implementing a football board which was absolutely required. The Glazers era left behind a bloated, underperforming structure. Maybe rapid, ruthless changes, painful or unpopular, were necessary to bring United into more of a modern era. Or is it a sign of reckless short-termism? Critics can argue that firing a high-profile sporting director so quickly after spending hundreds of millions and entrusting him with key decisions shows poor judgment. If they got Ashworth wrong, what else are they getting wrong? But what does it mean for fans and for the club and for our identity? United fans have been dealing with poor decision-making for nearly 20 years now. The Glazers are still there. But it feels different. This feels almost like it's the clash of the wills of a ruthless billionaire who's in the twilight of his life at his age, almost railing a little bit against football and tradition. The cost-cutting of staff, the disregard for symbolic gestures like supporting the Busby Babes families, the price hikes, that signals a more corporate, less human kind of touch. That erodes at the very fabric of what makes Manchester United United. The long-term impact on recruiting, both on and off the pitch, could be agents and talented players and executives watch these moves and go, nah, it's not the move at United. If United become known at a place where top personnel get blamed and jettisoned without proper backing, then why would the best coaches, the best directors and the best players want to come and join this project? We're still early days. They've not even been in charge a year just yet. But in a matter of those few months, we have seen upheavals that might normally take years. I think United fans are absolutely right to ask, what's the long-term plan here? INEOS track record at other clubs does show a pattern of impatience and a corporate style that does not blend well with a football club's deep-rooted cultural needs. Maybe some short-term chaos does shake itself out to long-term order. Maybe it's a warning sign that INEOS tenure at United could be defined by turbulence and short-term thinking and decisions that damage the identity. So should you be worried as a United fan? I'd say at the moment it's hard not to be. It feels like they're trying to do it for a better reason than the Glazers, and it feels like they care more than the Glazers. But the proof will be in the pudding. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.